Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Saturday morning. And we got another coaching hot board conversation for this Ohio State program. Offensive line coach Justin Frye moving on to the NFL. Ohio State going to be hiring another offensive line coach. Now, this is where I want to start. I'm going to speak a little bit for Ohio State fans, and I would love to hear from y'all in the comment section. When Jim Knowles left for Penn State, it was just anger, and rightfully so. Like that was kind of a move that felt like he got stabbed in the back a little bit. Justin Frye moving on to the NFL, I think a lot of Ohio State fans, at least the Ohio State fans that I know, are like, hey, happy for Justin Frye. Did a very good job in the college football playoffs, but I don't know if we're that upset about it because there were a lot of things that you look at with Justin Frye and said, there was some meat left on the bone. And I'll put my hand up and be the first one to admit, look, I was extremely hard on Justin Frye at times during his tenure at Ohio State. It felt like there were times with Ohio State where the offensive line was kind of holding this football team back. Now, what he did in the college football playoffs, you just have to give a tip of your cap. I mean, the amount of injuries that they endured up front and played, in my opinion, really damn well on the offensive line throughout the playoffs. So congratulations to Justin Frye moving on to the NFL, where I think it's a better fit for him, because if there was one knock on Justin Frye, it was just not getting done at a high enough level on the recruiting trail. Going to the NFL, he can just worry about coaching football. So I think it's kind of almost, good for Ohio State, good for Justin Frye. I think Arizona's getting a good offensive line coach. Now the conversation I think a lot of Ohio State fans want to have is, hey, where are we going for our next offensive line coach? And I'm going to start this the same way I started the defensive coordinator search, and that is, hey, there's nobody that you shouldn't feel like you can go pick up and call, because you look at this Ohio State program, where they are going, it's one of the premier programs in all of college football. So there are a lot of good offensive line coaches that are out there. And when we have this conversation for a lot of other programs across the country, there are just certain guys that maybe not are the most realistic. I think if you're Ohio State, you can really go and call just about anybody and probably get an answer on the other line. So I want to get into a few offensive line coach candidates, that is, before we do. And as always, to the Ohio State fans, a lot of support from y'all the last couple of weeks. Obviously, talking this team winning a national championship, talking about some changes that we are seeing to the coaching staff that might not be done yet. It's going to be a fun next couple of weeks. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, let it fly in the comment section. A lot of different ways Ohio State could go about replacing a guy like Justin Frye. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, this is the first call you have to make, in my opinion, if you're Ryan Day. Now, is he going to come from Penn State and come to Columbus? We'll see. I mean, we just saw Jim Knowles leave Ohio State, go to Penn State. Phil Trautwein, is there anybody across the country that's doing the job like he is? I mean, he blends. When you look at hiring position coaches, you look at two different things. Number one, can they recruit at a high level? Number two, can they develop at a high level? I don't know if anybody's doing both of those better than Phil Trautwein. I mean, he is recruiting, but by far, you look at Penn State and what position they recruit the best, it's on the line of scrimmage on the offensive line. You look at why they've been so successful the last couple of years, especially in 2024, very good offensive line, running the football and in pass protection. This one, in my personal opinion, he's a top 3 offensive line coach in all of college football right now. He's still a young cat as well, so this would make a lot more sense too, because you feel like he's just going in the right direction. I feel like there's a decent amount of offensive line coaches that have been doing it for a long time, are certainly good at what they're doing, but they're kind of stagnant. I look at Phil Trautwein and say he's just a rising star in the coaching industry. To me, that's the first call you have to make. Number two, and this is probably the second call, and maybe in some people's opinions, it's the first call you make, and that's Joe Rudolph at Notre Dame. When you talk about probably the two best in the business right now, Phil Trautwein, Joe Rudolph. Joe Rudolph, one, recruits the position awfully well, has done it for a really long time, even back at his time at Wisconsin. And then you look at him and say, what he did on the offensive line for Notre Dame this year is equally, if not more impressive than what Justin Frye did at Ohio State. I mean, they endured a ton of injuries starting in fall camp with their starting left tackle, Charles Jagasaw. And that was a unit that had to play a couple of true freshmen, a lot of young cats, and continued to get better as the season went on. And so you look at Phil Trautwein and Joe Rudolph, to me, they check both the boxes that you are looking for. They're really good coaches. They're also really good recruiters. And if you're Ohio State, what's that one position that on the recruiting trail has kind of felt like it's lacked? Like y'all who are watching this episode right now probably follow the recruiting trail. Ohio State, it's kind of the pick of their litter. You know what I mean? When they want top guys, they're going to be in for it at every position that you can really see. The offensive line position was probably that group that just wasn't being recruited at the caliber, at the level that all the other positions were. And so you are looking for a guy that can get it going a little bit more on the recruiting trail. I think both of these are really good coaches, but also really good recruiters. Another really good candidate that I'm not kind of sure what Scott Huff. He's the offensive line coach for Seattle. He came to Seattle with Ryan Grubb. Obviously, Ryan Grubb got fired last week. I'm guessing his job security is probably in limbo. You haven't seen any official news of him getting let go yet, but there's a new OC coming to town. Maybe he wants to hire his own staff. Scott Huff at Washington. I mean, he came with Ryan Grubb to Seattle. What he did at Washington was elite. You don't think about Washington having a great offensive line. It was Michael Penix, the wide receivers. That offensive line was elite for Washington in 2023 when they made that run through the college football playoffs. This would be another one that I think he recruits at a pretty dang high level for where he was at Washington. Did a phenomenal job developing guys like Roger Rosengard and Troy Fountain, Parker Brailsford, who's now at Alabama. To me, he would make a lot of sense. It might be kind of available as well. Another name that I think could make sense for Ohio State fans is Tim Drevno, obviously on staff with Ohio State right now. And again, the conversation here is continuity really important to you? You know, on the defensive side of the football for Ohio State going into 2025, I would think continuity is pretty dang important. And that's why I think a guy like Matt Quidary is a pretty darn good hire for Ohio State. You want to keep a good thing rolling. This Ohio State defense was clearly firing on all cylinders. Is the offensive line another position that you would want that continuity? And look, Tim Drevno, I think he's a really good offensive line coach. Kind of has a weird asterisk next to his name because he followed Jim Harbaugh kind of up the pipeline, did a really good job with his offensive lines pretty much at all his stops, and then comes to Michigan, gets the offensive coordinator tag as well. Not a great offensive coordinator, but a really good offensive line coach. Well, look, you brought him in to be I think he's just a quality control analyst right now for Ohio State, but I think he's a good offensive line coach. Yeah, he's not going to call plays for Ohio State. That wouldn't be a good move. But to hire him to coach your offensive line and recruit the offensive line, like, to me, that makes a lot of sense. And so Tim Drevno on staff would probably be the easiest and make the most sense. Then the conversation is, hey, do we think he's the right guy for the job? Last one I'll throw out, Adam Cushing at Texas A&M. Really, really impressed with what he did at Texas A&M in 2024. That was a bad offensive line in 2023. They didn't really make a ton of transfer portal additions. They were kind of just running it back and hoping for some better development. You saw that development, in my opinion, at Texas A&M. I think he's one of the better offensive line coaches in the game. Did a great job at Duke as well. There's a lot of names that you could put on this list. I think Bart Miller at Illinois would be another one to look at as well. We'll see where Ohio State decides to go. My overall take is congratulations to Justin Frye. I don't think it's nearly a disaster for Ohio State fans. And I think this is an opportunity to get an offensive line coach in here that can recruit to Ohio State at the level that we expect the offensive line to recruit to. We'll see how it plays out. Those are the names I have. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Let it fly in the comments section because, again, we'll probably talk about this again, and I'll look at the names that you guys put in the comment section. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.